for a lot of the races so far is that Cold Stare, or just Ice Palace in general, has been like the great equalizer. Like, we've seen so many runs that normally would die at Cold Stare or Ice Palace, but of course it's a race setting, so you just got to keep trucking. You got to keep going for it.
Yeah, as painful as the actual death is, just getting back into that dungeon takes so much time. You know, so it's a real easy way to turn the tide, that's for sure.
Hopefully we won't see any major dumbs in this race. I'm excited. Right now, based on each player's PBs, as of currently on speedrun.com, eLmaGus is right around the 129 mark, while Andy is right around the 135 mark. So, 6-minute difference, but all it takes is a vitreous death, a bad land molas, and all of a sudden you got a little bit closer of a race. And who knows? A lot of players might not have updated might have been grinding off, getting PBs on the side, just haven't updated them on speedrun.com. So we'll see what happens.
Definitely. I think some people have quoted a few different ranges. I think, any time that you can do 3 minutes better or worse and be competitive with somebody who does the same, you've got to wonder what's going to happen. It's not a gimme, that's for sure.
Beginning of the run's pretty straightforward. Your usual, get to go through Hyrule Castle, save Zelda, blah, blah, blah. The hardest boss coming up is going to be that ball and chain guard that holds the big key.
Yeah, that guy's the worst.
He does a lot of damage. When you only have 3 hearts, all it takes is 3 hits. So I can't imagine either of these runners having difficulty there.
Both runners doing a pretty nice job there of nailing that first key guard down to the door. Optimally, you can get him literally right at the door, but anywhere down in that region is a pretty good move. Andy, coming into that room just a teensy bit low, ended up getting aggroed by the green guard. It cost him a few seconds. Not too bad, but subtle things do have a tendency to add up in these runs, especially in a split like Escape. It's so movement heavy. It's really all you've got going on aside from the ball and chain guard. So any little delay like that, definitely, you feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll see if we'll get 8 slashes from each of these players, or if we'll see any pot strats come into play. Those pots are dang strong.
They are, 2 pots versus 8 slashes, and more importantly, with the pots, it's free, basically. There's no risk involved in the strat. Both runners going for the 8 slashes, though, and doing a pretty good job of getting through there quickly.
Yeah, you want to try and, obviously, knock him up against the wall so he stays perfectly still, instead of having to, fight, knock him to the left, knock him to the right. Ideally, you also want to get him knocked into right in front of the key door, so that you can just grab the key and go, instead of just to save a couple seconds as well. Maybe 1 second.
Definitely. One thing that's really interesting about this game in the first little segment here is that the lamp that they just picked up from that chest in Zelda Cell, the game really, really, really wants to give you that lamp. There's actually a few chests, any of which would have happily contained that lamp had our players chose to open it. For anybody who doesn't know, we open it there so that we already have the boomerang and we don't get automatically switched to the lamp.
Oh, that's why. Okay, I didn't know why we got it there. I just agreed that was what you do, and I'm like, all right, that's fair. I'll just do it then.
I mean, that works too.
You can pick it up in Link's house. You can also pick it up in the secret passageway after you get the sword from the uncle. And aside from, lighting up dark rooms, if you go try and push the mantle to get to the back of sewers and you don't have the lamp, Zelda will be like, hey, it's too dark in there. I'm not going in there. You need to go find me a light source. I'm like, all right. Let's see if get any pumping action going on in the sewer section. I think I've been seeing little bits and pieces of it here and there.
Yeah, this dungeon, there's a few places
there we go.
For people to pump, potentially. Big one coming up is going to be the 2 rooms with the water floors in here. Those are good opportunities for a little bit of pumping.
Yeah, as I said that, we saw a ton of it from eLmaGus' side. It's just nice for those diagonal movements to save a couple here and there.
Yeah, I know Andy unfortunately got a little bit bodied by the snakes in that first room after heading downstairs. Those guys, sometimes they line up super nice for you, sometimes they really love to punish you, and unfortunately he got one of the slightly more punishing patterns.
Yeah, it's nice having that boomerang right off the bat because of being able to use that to mitigate some of the bad RNG.
Yeah, eLmaGus got a pretty nice little key rat there. Andy, unfortunately, looks like he got the top left RNG, which is never fun.
Yeah, it's one of the worst ones.
It's not really any more difficult, it's just time-consuming and annoying.
Those rats are so good at just getting in the way.
eLmaGus doing the thing that I do all the time, which is trying to grab that switch and failing because grabbing is difficult, apparently.
It's really annoying when you're trying to go fast, and something as simple as grabbing a lever fails.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but that trigger region for grabbing is never either as big or as small as I think it is.
I assume both players are going to pick up that sank heart. It's nice to have one extra heart going through the rest of the game. You don't really have to worry about dying too early. Like I feel like the earliest you have a chance of taking a death is when you go up to Death Mountain, just because of dead rocks and boulder RNG and how much damage each of those does.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is one of those things where even for players who ordinarily in their runs would not take Sanctuary Heart, you know, you got to consider being in a race setting. It's such a low-cost insurance policy to grab that, you know, I think everybody is at least considering it, you know, just from a safety and consistency standpoint.
The one thing I've noticed in a lot of these races, I mean, especially when you have two players that maybe are like 5 minutes apart in PB, Light World generally is pretty straightforward. They usually stick pretty close together. Maybe it gets away from them at land molas, and then obviously blue balls, which are completely out of their control. But I guess that's part of the whole playing this game is that Light World is usually the most optimized because that's the most you play before you reset. Because there's always something that goes wrong in Dark World.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You know, you see runners with strengths all over the map. You know, Light World has one of, arguably two of the most annoying RNG-heavy bosses in the game. But the other big thing about Light World is you don't have a lot of your tools available to you. So it's really, really about core movement. Certainly after Eastern we get the boots, and that becomes really, really important. Maximizing all of your dash lanes and all of that sort of stuff. But, eLmaGus, unfortunately, missing one of those, missing the timing a little bit in that skeleton room, having to kill all three.
Yeah, it looked like he cut the corner, cut the turn a little too sharp, and tossed it. He still hit one of them, but he had to walk a little bit further to the left to trigger the right one.
Let's see if our runners get these extra arrows. Both of them are grabbing them.
Usually, I feel like do you usually grab that one, or is it the two on the way to getting the bow, the two in the room with the Anapharies, and then like the one outside, like the last red armos room or whatever?
Yeah, I usually grab the extra arrows, mostly because I feel like they're relatively quick to get, but also, you know, I'm a player who isn't 100% confident in my arrow count at Land Molas or coming out of Land Molas, so I like to have a little bit of an insurance policy. You know, different players approach that differently. There are a ton of arrows available to you in this dungeon. They are not necessary. It's just a question of where you want to get them.
I feel like you can never have too many arrows and bombs. No, I know, like with bombs, you're routed in just for menuing purposes, saving menuing in certain situations, but I always go out of my way to have extra bombs. But that's because I still use powder, so like the advantage I get from a quicker menu where it auto switches to fire rod in situations, stuff like that doesn't really affect me yet.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of the situation is that having extra bombs is arguably great until you get to Misery Mire, and then you want to have 0. So up until that point, you know, I'm kind of the same as you. I'd rather have a little bit of a insurance policy going into the hammer jump and the Ice Palace bomb jump and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, Andy only picking up one of those arrow pods, so he's going to be down 5.
Yeah, there are 4 pots worth of arrows in the room just before the Armos Knights. They're a little bit time-consuming to pick up relative to grabbing the extra arrow pot in that room, but not too bad.
I guess he could... Yeah, a lot of times you'll get arrow drop from the Igors and Andy. Unfortunately, a little slow to the punch, missing killing the second red Igor. Oh, but Magus shooting to the left as opposed to down, so he's probably going to miss that quick kill on Armos. Going to have to use a couple extra arrows to finish the fight.
Gets it done nicely, though, and honestly, 7 arrows is not a terrible arrow count to be leaving this dungeon with.
That's not
especially by comparison to Andy, who'll be exiting with 0. So he's definitely going to be, you know, looking to boost his arrow count, maybe by grabbing a couple extra pots in Desert if he's concerned about Lamolus.
Yeah, there's a good few on the way there that you should still be able to get up to at least like 20, 25. Yeah, leaving Eastern without any arrows is kind of frustrating. The next difference in routing sometimes is in the back of Sahasrala's hut, he has 100 rupees and some bombs you can get in there. There is a separate route where you optimize using tree poles, which are dependent on like how many enemies you kill and damage taken and stuff, and we'll be seeing that from eLmaGus. We'll talk about that when we get a little bit closer. It looks like both
from
players.
Andy, yeah. Yep, 2 tree rupee routes.
And these rupees that we're talking about are used to get into the first Dark World dungeon, Palace of Darkness, which you need 110 rupees to unlock the front door. The nice thing is, if something goes awry or something goes wrong, there are backup strats. The slowest being that you can just mirror and go right back into Sahasrala's hut to get those rupees right before going into pod. Andy not getting favorable, I don't know if it's RNG or just incorrect positioning to get across the bridge without taking damage.
I think it's primarily a positioning thing, actually. You know, one of the big things about a lot of these screens is, and weirdly, that bridge, both in the light world and the dark world, it's all about getting an early dash that's positioned well, getting down the bridge at the right time, and just generally being really crisp and clean with your movement. If you do it properly, I don't think you should ever really get hit there, but it's easy to mess it up by a little bit.
That bush that Magus just went by is so frustrating because, you know, it doesn't line up with any of, like, the walls for, like, setting up dashes or anything through it, like where Andy is coming from. You also can't get underneath it, so... But I did like the use of spin speeds to and from the library that Magus uses.
So here's the interesting thing about that. You know, Andy opted not to go with the spin speed. The reality of the situation is that... by and large, the spin speeds in this game actually save pretty small amounts of time. They're good optimizations, but you have to think about if you are unable to get it first try, you're actually eating into, or in some cases eliminating, that time save entirely. So, you know, consistency in what you can actually pull off every run is definitely really, really valuable.
Alright, but eLmaGus will be the first one into Desert Palace. This dungeon is pretty straightforward. It's, you know, dash to the left, dash to the right. The item we're getting in here are going to be the power gloves, which we need, obviously, to complete the run, but also to get to the back of Desert Palace to fight one of the worst bosses in the game, Landmolas, which is 3 worms, or snakes, however you want to look at them, that have a lot of RNG with them.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed a lot of runners doing when they enter this dungeon is actually, you know, walking kind of all the way straight up the middle towards that pedestal and using the book. You can actually grab and activate that cutscene really, really far to the left on that pedestal, or that tablet, or whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't really save any time on the cutscene itself, but it prevents you from having to walk around the thing, and you can kind of move up diagonally to it. So it's a nice little time save.
Is it kind of like how you don't have to walk up the steps to get the Master Sword, or You can talk to the stump kid to get the shovel like really high up. Like you're not even like your eyes aren't even meeting even the top of their head.
Yeah, same thing. There's a lot of really deceptively large trigger, trigger boxes and regions and stuff in this game, and this is one of them.
Yeah, you saw from both players grabbing that 5-arrow pot right in the room Andy's in right now. There's also 2 more 5-arrow pots that you're seeing ALTMAGUS pick up in the room right before the big chest, and sitting at 27 is comfortable for the run.
Yeah, I would be very happy with that arrow count.
Andy might pick up another one. There is one more pot on the way out from this section of desert, but there's one of those is it levy or levers? The little things that come out of the ground.
Levers.
That kind of blocks you from grabbing that pot. Otherwise, there's one right outside the big key door where Landmollo's lies.
It's a little bit out of the way as you're triggering those little torches in that room, but again, way better than not having the arrow. Oh
no! See, that's why a lot of players just skip that spin speed, because the window that you have to like move down and move to get through there is it's just not worth it, because that's a huge time loss. You'll see a lot of players, if they do that spin speed, will do a pause buffer, which allows them to also switch to lamp, which they need later on in the dungeon. But yeah, that looked like a recipe for disaster. If you don't get it immediately, then just don't go for it at all.
Yeah, this is again one of those things where, in some cases the risk outweighs the reward, and unfortunately for Andy, that's the way it went down.
He did fortunately pick up another arrow pot along the way, so that's all right. 3 shots in the first one, and then horrible RNG for the other 2. That's about it. So he's got 1 down. That's good. Yeah, so this is why this boss is so frustrating, is just because you're having to think on the fly to try and sink as many arrows into Landmollo's as possible. It takes 4 arrows to take him down, or what, 16 slashes? Something like that?
Yeah. Imagine having after that one kind of bad RNG luck cycle there, he actually did quite a good job of cleaning up that fight. Those last few cycles were pretty clean.
Mm-hmm. That was good. That's when you can be like, all right, I'm okay with that. I can live with this. Really like that desert movement. I've incorporated that into my own run after watching some of these races.
Interestingly, I actually just switched away from that movement.
Really?
Yeah, it's and it's to that thing I was talking about earlier. I'm probably like 4 for 5, on that route where I don't slip up the timing and get bodied by the sand guy. So for me, it's like I'd rather go 5 for 5 on something that's just a tiny bit slower.
I gotta say, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, but Andy got some beautiful patterns in there with those Landmollos going straight up and down. He was able to pump like 4 arrows into each of them, so that was gorgeous. On ALTMAGUS' side, we did see one of the first glitches that we used in the game, the fake flipper glitch. Essentially, if you hit the water, raise the screen transition, you trick the game into thinking you have the flippers, which allows you to swim up through this whirlpool and get kind of a shortcut back up to Death Mountain as opposed to running all the way around.
Yeah, this
the only time you'll see it. This game is a stupid game. Nah, actually.
Yeah, well, it's just a little bit weird, but it only checks for certain conditions at very particular times, and so a lot of the glitches that we're doing here are actually making sure that we beat or avoid those checks. Because once you're on a new screen, it actually doesn't check whether you're allowed to be there. You're just there.
Yeah, you just gotta make sure you don't get hit, because then the game will check. Favorable Zora spawns for both players. Sometimes that Zora loves to just spawn right on top of the whirlpool or just slightly off of it. So then you gotta either beat him to the punch or stall, and then the longer you stall, the scarier it gets. Because basically, if you get hit, you gotta kind of save and quit and go back to that spot. Otherwise,
ordinarily,
there's a chance that you might soft lock.
Ordinarily, that's not even allowed in the run, actually, that save and quit. We have a specific exception for it in the tournament. just so that people don't have their whole race disappear, 18, 19, 20 minutes into the run with no ability to recover.
It's like Magus got good RNG from going up Death Mountain, only down 1 heart going into Tower of Heroes, so he's got health to work with, and he's got to be a little bit careful. He's down to 3. And the worst thing is, like, while you're in the little cutscene with the old man, sometimes the boulders will continue. Well, the boulders will continue to fall, and sometimes they'll just spawn right on top of you while you're waiting for the cutscene to end.
Yeah, ALTTP unfortunately running into my least favorite
mini Moldorm
in the entire game. That little mini Moldorm in the top left of the main floor of Tower of Hera is just a beast. That guy. I don't know what it is about that, just the way he's positioned, there's like 5 things in the game where I just feel like there's some game designer in Kyoto, who's just been laughing at me for 25 years, and he put that mini Moldorm there. I know it.
It's like that, and the 2 in the petting zoo upstairs are just, they somehow find a way to dodge all your attacks and get like up all over you. It's really annoying.
Definitely. ALTTP just throwing his boomerang out there to try and make sure to kill that last tile before it had to fully resolve. That lets the door open a little bit faster.
That was some favorable movement for him. The mini Moldorms were coming in close, but opted to dodge him. That could be a scary room too. You don't want to be going upstairs with like 2, even just 1 heart, because we still have a bomb jump coming up. He fell through the floor! How did he do that?
To quote the great Super Scudge again, game's weird man.
Oh no. Andy was going for the boomerang dash to set up an iframes, but I don't know exactly why he bonked. Oh, I guess you have to like stop just in time, so he was a little late to stop in his dash.
The boomerang is that boomerang dash is very, very finicky. Fortunately, eLmaGus making his bomb jump happen, easy peasy, easy every time, no problem at all. I'm trying to
down to 2 hearts
past the fire, but unfortunately dropped it for just a split second. Good read there, because that
thought about it.
That bumper skip positioning was not quite right, and he made a very, very, very good choice in recognizing that that was not going to happen.
All right, here is one of the second worst boss fights in the game compared to Landmole. It's not really too much RNG dependent. Apparently, Moldorm does have like a quote-unquote script, but it's just really scary, especially when you're down to 1 heart.
I think the difference with the Moldorm script is just that it's almost impossible to follow identically every time. Like the blind fight, which is the one we usually talk about being scripted a little bit later on in the run.
mean, it's a script, but like it's mostly improv, basically. But Magus gets through 1 heart left. That was a little scary. Let's see how Andy does it. Also, almost taking a dip there. Gonna bail on that as well. Yeah, so far, other than that drop-down Desert Ledge, we haven't really had any major dumbs from either players, so that's good.
Yeah, and honestly, the time difference here, not going to be that big coming out of the Tower of Hera here. Barring a fall to Moldorm or something from Andy. None of this is insurmountable, that's for sure.
Oh, very nice. Dashing straight up through Moldorm is a tricky scenario because sometimes it just don't work. Sometimes you just take damage regardless. But nice fight from him. And over on eLmaGus side, we are seeing the tree poles. So, would you like to explain that, Emo?
Sure. So in this game, based on the number of enemies you've killed without taking damage, there are certain trees that you can pull, and they will give you different things. In this particular case, they're going to be giving us rupees. There are 2 amounts that we're looking for. That first tree pull that he did is actually basically guaranteed, and that one will give you 4 blue rupees for 5 each. The next tree pull that we're going to be looking for involves killing 4 more enemies without taking damage, and that's going to net us 4 red rupees for 20 each, which will give us 121 in this case, and more than enough.
Yeah, the worst thing that could happen is on your way to, for example, what just happened to Andy, on your way to getting the tree pole, you get like a bush guard, or sometimes there's those little bombs that spawn underneath bushes. You gotta be extra careful. And saw that random bush guard just appear for Andy. So good thing you didn't take damage there.
Yeah, bush guards, sometimes that little pickle, I forget what you're supposed to call him, but that little pickle won't cooperate. Yeah, and that can be really frustrating if you go for that kill. But eLmaGus got his rupees. He is good to go. Now he's still looking to not get hit, but not for rupees. It's rather going to be because the first two rooms in Aga's tower, which we're coming up to now, are substantially faster with sword beams. You can do them with arrows. He has enough arrows to do it quickly that way, but definitely from a resource standpoint, a speed standpoint, doing it with beams is a better balance most of the time.
Yeah, this first two rooms in Aga Tower is still something that I haven't quite, like, not so much perfected, or even just I haven't attempted. I watch it, and then I'm like, I'm gonna do what they did, and then just completely screw it up every time. Can't imagine it being hard, right? Spin, 2 arrows, slash. Oh no, but he got. Oh well, okay, he made it work. Usually you spin there to get the double spin on him up against the railing, but he moved too high up, and the ball and chain guard moved up with him, so that didn't allow him to get that quicker spin. But
yeah, generally the thing you're looking to do there is actually hit him with a beam from the left to kind of knock him back and stun him for a second, which gives you time to get over there, bait him up to the top of the little ledge there, and then do the double spin by holding the sword from the initial beam that you shot out. So it ends up being really, really smooth, really, really fast when you get it done, but it's kind of hard to recover once you've had an error anywhere in the process.
It's also one of the nice things about having arrows leaving Desert Palace. Just so you could use them in the gauntlet, or the gauntlet. We're not there yet. The Aga Gauntlet, especially for the rooms coming up with the red guards, which you'll see. Andy going for the ring the bell strat, and opting to use a spin to kill those guards instead. So getting different strats going on. And it's called Ring the Bell because usually a lot of players, as far as I know, it's because players will tap on the door and it sounds like a bell ringing. You're calling them over to dinner.
Yeah,
it's that. It's a funny joke, guys. Just laugh, all right? Oh no! So wow. That's one of those really obnoxious things about the guards' line of sight, their vision. If you've ever seen, there's a video online that shows what actually shows what their line of sight is. And it's like a huge, goofy, spirally laser. And basically, it counts as a hitbox that will block your boomerang. It'll block your hook shot. So I think that's what happened there, which it hit that instead, which didn't allow him to pick up the key.
Yeah, those awareness volumes are really terrible. So eLmaGus is going to be entering the Aghanim fight very, very soon. This is our second big opportunity for a lot of randomness that could put our players on either side of each other. Depending on how many blue balls Aghanim decides to shoot out, our players will take different amounts of time on this fight, barring any other errors.
Alright, so the question of the day, who's going to have the better luck? Getting a couple blue balls for eLmaGus. What are you up to, 2 or 3? I mean, we've seen think it was Blunt Bunny that got 11 blue balls in one of his races earlier, so, you know, that could be a bit of a game changer going into the Dark World. It's gonna, you know, if Andy gets the God RNG, these 0 blue balls, he might be able to, he'd be able to save a little bit of time here. You're also seeing players knock Aga into the center. Ideally, that's done to mitigate any sort of time loss from Aga warping around to set up for the next shot. So just hit him to the center, and it might save you some time.
Yeah, it's really about minimizing the distance that he travels and the time he spends doing it. So eLmaGus has made his way into the Dark World. Andy will hopefully be right behind him.
This is one of the worst text boxes in the game, in my opinion. It's just so long. Sitting through it is such a pain.
You know, the weird thing is it's actually pretty average for, you know, any of the crystal dialogues. Because I think it's like a 30-second cutscene, including the warp, actually. Maybe 40.
All right, so coming up, you're going to see those rupees come into play. There is a lovely little purple monkey named Kiki who offers to open up Palace of Darkness for you if you give him some dang money.
Yeah, so the thing to be watching out for here is, one, when we pick up Kiki, we need to not get hit, or else Kiki will leave, and we will have to give him 10 more rupees to join our little party again. The other thing is we'll be looking at our runners most likely attempting a little Kiki dash here, which involves canceling your dash just before the cutscene triggers here, which gets Kiki a little bit closer to you and reduces the amount of time he spends walking at his very, very, very slow cutscene speed.
Palace of Darkness. The one thing we do here the most is get keys and mirror. And, but more importantly, coming up will be the very fun, the very exciting, the hammer jump, which is a double pixel perfect bomb jump setup to get the hammer, grab a small key to save. How much time save is it? Like 40 seconds or whatever from having to run down and grab one?
It's quite a bit of time. So eLmaGus doing a really nice read on the jelly that was blocking his jump down to the basement. Just choosing to fire a quick sword beam up there and run through. One other thing to keep in mind about the routing here in Pod is that in addition to just trying to do the dungeon fairly efficiently, a big part of why we route it the way that we do with as many mirrors as we do is because this is also where we get all of our bombs for the rest of the run. There are backups that we might pick up later if we end up, you know, flubbing a bomb jump or you know, needing a reserve. But all of these mirrors here route us through this room in particular that eLmaGus is in right now to grab more and more bombs, and we're going to be looking to exit this dungeon with a bomb count we are comfortable with.
Yeah, the nice thing is there's still one more mirror, and then you can grab one more bomb, and then there's 2 more bombs in the room just east of eLmaGus. So, and there's still more bombs along the way to Helma. It's almost like they wanted you to use bombs to fight the boss. But,
yeah, funny that.
Well, that was an interesting setup for eLmaGus there. I'm not sure what happened, but he got the bomb jump. But a lot of times players will drop 2 bombs, pick one up, toss it across, and then line up for the bomb jump. But I don't know if that fairy threw off his groove or something. But
he may have been a little bit concerned about that fairy because it's potentially indicative of his prize pack having been screwed up for the rest of the run. So ordinarily we like to manipulate the enemy drops in such a way that we'll get a fairy in Turtle Rock, which is a great place to get a fairy. But he may have been thrown a little bit for a loop there. Fortunately hasn't lost. It looks like Andy got the fairy as well. eLmaGus grabbing a couple hearts there. It's really, really helpful to have beams going into this back half of the dungeon There's a crystal switch, or two actually, that we need to trigger, and it's much more efficient, both time and resource-wise, to do that with sword beams as opposed to having to pull out the bow or waste arrows. And it also saves us a menu switch down here in the basement.
Yeah, unfortunately, Andy get hit by some fire while grabbing that small key in the dark maze, so he's gonna have to grab a couple extra hearts in that same room where you push the statue on the switch, just so he'll have those sword beams going downstairs. I want to point out though that using the cool thing about like some of the strats in the game is there are a couple different ways you could do it. We saw, you know, eLmaGus go for. Did he do a pause, like one pause buffer basically, or?
Yeah, I think he did one pause buffer and then went for the sword lineup.
Yeah, and then Andy went for select buffering. And there's also different ways you can actually line up that jump, different cues, like visual cues you can use. So there's a lot of resources and tons of arguments about what's faster and what's better. But no, it's cool seeing different options. But here we go into the Helma fight. It's 17 hits on Helma's mask to break it off, and then well, there's a few ways you can do the second part, but you'll see players either go for slashes, spins, or hammer pokes, which are really nice. Oh, a nice use of stalling to break the mask just to despawn the fireballs, but getting another set of fireballs immediately is not pleasant.
Yeah, it's not the friendliest RNG, that's for sure. Doing a nice job cleaning up with a quick slash there. Generally, once you start getting off cycle for those hammer hits, unless you have a moment to breathe because of a fireball cycle or whatever, it's often better to just go for some slashes at the tail end of that. But that was a very nicely done fight.
Mm-hmm. Let's see how Andy handles whatever Helma RNG gets. Yeah, I really like the utilization of hammer pokes in the second phase. The problem is you really have to time it. And understand that if he's like charging at you, you'd be better off just like letting go of your spin instead. Well, Andy not despawning the fireball, but getting 3 hammer pokes in, and then finishing off with 2 slashes. So really nice fight for both of them. Yeah, we saw there from Andy that the fireball hadn't actually like left Helma, so it didn't despawn. It doesn't cancel his animation, or cancels the fireballs until it like actually leaves him.
All right, so the screen with the murder dactyl that eLmaGus just made his way out of is one of my least favorite screens in the whole game. Both of those enemies, the Myrtledactyl and the Snapjaw, can body you badly, as can those guards on the bridge if you don't know the sort of safe movement there. But eLmaGus is doing a great job of both of those screens, getting through nice and cleanly. Easy peasy.
Yeah, there's a lot of enemies in the Dark World that do a good amount of damage. Surprisingly enough, for how late the first, male upgrade is for the players in the vanilla game, like not in the speedrun, obviously, since we don't get either male upgrades. The game actually wants you to do quite a bit, but they also gave you a lot of safeties to work with and a lot of safeties that players, especially at this level, skip. I believe both of our players also are powderless for this. I don't think Andy picked it up. I know Magus didn't. And usually, if you run, for those that run the game, powder's like the last thing you drop, so.
Yeah, aside from maybe Sankart, but yeah.
I don't really categorize that with the rest of the stuff. Sankart is...
I kind of agree with you, but so eLmaGus just got what I consider to be the most important spin speed in the entire game. It lets you pretty reliably beat that ultra-fast guard that stands between you and Kakariko Village, affectionately known as Usain Bolt for obvious reasons.
Yeah, he's pretty quick, and especially because to get around him, you have to move, diagonally, and that's a lot slower than moving in cardinal directions. So he can really catch up on you. That spin speed, I don't know. I really like all the spin speeds you use in that single screen to the library and back, and then again through there.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun one. And it's a lot of kind of tricksy movement. So Andy not getting the spin speed and opting to dash through, so you can see how careful he's having to be. That guard is spicy.
Oh, Andy taking a different route through Kakariko to get up here. Not that it really matters that much. I've just never seen that.
Right, so eLmaGus making his way into Thieves Town. At this point, we are now doing things in a fairly substantially different order than the game intends us to do them. This is actually Dungeon 4, if you were to check the map. So we are well off sequence here. We do this so that we can get the Titan's Mitts early. And that will enable us to route the rest of the game a good bit more effectively, coupled with the flute.
Yeah, generally the game wants you to go to Swamp Palace next, and then Mothula, or Skullwoods, and then Thieves Town. But, we do what we want. Thieves Town's it's a fun dungeon, but it's really easy to lose health here and there along the way, especially at this room coming up for eLmaGus, known as the Hellway. Let's see if there's a particular pixel lineup that you can get to just basically dash through everything as long as the enemies allow it, and the enemies are not allowing it today for eLmaGus. But he gets through, only taking 2 hearts of damage.
Yeah, one of the things about this game that makes it so difficult to run effectively is that there are a bunch of, again, pretty RNG-heavy choke points in the game. And so a lot of what makes you a great runner is not just being able to execute really well, but also to read the RNG in the game and react appropriately. And that's one of those rooms where that can absolutely be a challenge.
Alright, let's see how Andy handles the awful RNG for the Hellway coming up. I believe in you. You got this. We need to get at least 1 God Pixel. Nah. That Patrick Star was not going to allow it anyway.
And one thing that's interesting to me, watching other runners do that room, you'll sometimes see runners actually walk out into the middle of the room and try to line up that way. The interesting thing about this game, and as you try to get more consistent about it, using your dash movement to help you line up for things is actually a really, really powerful tool. Dashing moves you 4 pixels per frame, and so anytime you're trying to line up with something that's on a 4 pixel boundary, like that God Pixel, dashing to it is actually going to give you a substantially higher rate of success so long as you're good at canceling your dash appropriately.
And that's, I'd say, one of the factors that might give players that are playing on console over emulator an advantage, because there's a lot of input delay when it comes to playing on emulator. So getting those dash cancels at the right time is a lot harder.
You'll get no argument from me. Alright, so here we go with our first blind fight. This fight, at least the first time you do it, is 100% scripted. So long as eLmaGus sticks to the script, he will have an easy fight that he knows exactly how it's going to go. Pretty nicely done, yeah. Getting those first 2 phases of the fight solid are really the critical ones. Getting the third phase in the quickest possible way is nice, but getting the first 2 phases done properly will ensure that your third phase is at least consistent and manageable, as opposed to a giant fireball warping mess.
I'd say I'd go even as far to say that blind is probably one of the easier fights in the Dark World, as long as you stick to the script. As soon as that fight starts to get away with you, it's the same thing with Mothula, the Skullwoods boss. If you can take him out before all the spikes start throwing it around, or if you can finish off blind without it getting out of hand, The fights are pretty straightforward and easy.
All right, so eLmaGus is going to be beginning sort of the next round of money gathering here in the game. Unfortunately, this one's substantially less finicky than the last one that we did. Andy, really quick, having quite a nice blind fight, actually. Stuck to the script really, really well and finished the fight up pretty close to the left-hand side of that light. The best you can do is actually to kill him so quickly that he's dying left of that little light patch, but anywhere on that left third of it is a pretty nice fight.
Yeah, good fights from both of them. Also, we're going to be getting our next sword upgrade. Saving this blacksmith will get us the tempered sword, which is pretty tremendous increase in attack power for the rest of the run compared to the master sword, which is a garbage weapon. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
Fair enough. I don't know if I'd call it garbage, but you know, it's not my favorite.
Compared to the tempered sword. I mean, of course, it's better than the fighter sword, but it's like, you know, you go through all this trouble to pull out the master sword from the pedestal, and then you just save a frog from the dark world, and boom, you're like double damage.
I wouldn't dumpster the master sword. I'd give it.
I mean,
a neighborhood kid who needed a sword, you know, instead of, but. It is always funny to me in this game, though, that, you know, the fabled master sword is the third weakest sword in the game, or second weakest sword in the game. I did that backwards.
Fortunate, eLmaGus missing the Dark World, the Village of Outcasts fence dash. It's okay.
I do love that fence dash. I do love that fence dash.
Let's see if we can get it from Andy. It's not like a game changer or anything, but some people just really enjoy the fence dash. So you got to call it out.
Yeah, and I'm with chat here. I think anytime people go for some of those really tricksy things, you know, you got to respect that. One, because I think it's always great to see people going for strats that are difficult. But two, that's one of those strats where a big part of the skill and being able to do it safely is actually knowing when you didn't get it, so that you can avoid the bonk.
Ooh, unfortunate for eLmaGus, getting a little pulling the statue up a little too soon. He didn't get it lined up far enough to the left, so he had to push it back down and reset. Only a little bit of time lost, but for the most part, the Gyvdos not giving him the business. Those Gyvdos can kind of get in your way pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's one of those rooms that can go sideways on you very, very quickly. And how you choose to deal with a minor slip up there can be the difference between a pretty tiny time loss or a massive exercise and frustration and health drain.
Another nice little bomb jump there. See a lot of players doing this setup where they bonk up against the wall for whatever reason. Probably magic, I'd say. Bonking against the wall kind of gives you a little bit more room to breathe for the lineup in order to get the bomb jump to work. There is a way you can do it without bonking, but you have to be a little bit closer to the hole, and there's always that chance that you're just going to immediately fall down. And I'm not sure what happened to Andy, but he accidentally mirrored out and reset the room.
I've never done that before, ever.
Fortunately, he did it right at the start of it, so I don't know if he maybe thought he had the boomerang out or something, or it was just a misclick.
eLmaGus doing a nice job, just getting a little bump left after entering that first room in the back of Skullwoods, and using the block there to line up for a easy key dash.
He's down 4 hearts, but assuming that Mothula goes according to plan, he can get through it without taking any damage. You also don't really want to... A lot of players that will get like powdered stuff will have sword beams, but you don't really want to have sword beams going into that room that eLmaGus just went into, or even for Mothula, because sword beams they kind of get in the way. But let's see this moth fight. Nice,
very nicely done.
That first hit, he kind of stuck up in the top right corner, so he had to use a fire rod to kind of dislodge him. But the rest of the movement was pretty good, and even though he was pretty high up for that last hit, he hit him into that block, which allowed it to still count, because, of course, Mothula's broken, so every time you hit him into a spike, whether it's moving or stationary, it doesn't register as a hit.
Yeah, so there's a really weird thing with the way that damage works in this game. There's actually 4 classes of damage in the game, and the top class, which is class 4, is done by tempered sword spin attacks, the level 4 sword, the butter sword, that yellow one, and also spikes. Mothula, living in a room filled with spikes, the designers of the game felt that it probably wouldn't be very fun if he just died to his own room immediately. So their solution to that problem was to make him immune to class 4 damage.
Can we get a version where he's susceptible to his spikes, so you just walk in and see him just immediately die?
That would be pretty fun, but that is why one of the things you'll be watching the runners do in this fight at all times is trying to make sure that they're hitting him not directly into those spikes. If he takes damage from those spikes, it will actually negate whatever you use to hit him up there. So you can swing your sword and get a clean hit on him, but if he bounces into a spike too quickly, 0 damage. It's a ton of fun.
I noticed Andy didn't go for... One of the things that most players go for when they start the fight is they'll dash into Mothula. They'll line up with that block in the middle, top middle, and they'll dash into that and bonk off of that. And oftentimes it sets up, it'll like, for whatever reason, it'll double hit. It'll treat it like 2 hits on Mothula. And then, but Andy didn't go for that this time, so he had to hit him a few extra times. It was also unfortunate because he got hit by the bunny beam in the previous room, because the mini Moldorm was not having it, not letting him do his thing. So he had to wait out the bunny beam to finish in the second room, and then he couldn't get the lineup to hit the Gibdo into the spike, so he had to use the fire rod, and that cost him a little bit more time. That's the thing about this game, is like, it doesn't take much to lose a lot of time.
Definitely not. So Mage is picking up his Quake medallion from the catfish there. Bonking off of that wall before grabbing it and then mirroring puts him in the perfect X position on screen to get what we call a quick warp. We've seen a few quick warps already so far in the run, but you'll see them being a little bit more deliberate about them for the rest of the run. There are particular lineups that we're looking for. That one happens to be free if you do that bonk. Those quick warps are pretty significant. It actually saves almost half a second every time you get one, as opposed to a regular slow warp, so it's pretty substantial.
Oh man, that's unfortunate for Andy. On his way to Catfish, he got hit by the, what is it, the Ropas, and going down 2 hearts. You want to have, the next place we're going to is going to be Ice Palace, and the second room in Ice Palace is a room with 3 jellies, or berries, and it's nice to go in there having sword beams, because a lot of times the berry will just immediately start using his electric attack, and then you either have to just wait it out, or hit him with a fire rod. And fire rod is weird, because it will either instantly kill enemies, or it'll like do a burning animation that makes him take a little bit longer.
Yeah, Mage is doing a really great job, actually, of getting past the Zoras into that whirlpool to get over to Ice Palace here. Unfortunately, I think he got hit maybe by a Zora fireball at one point and took half a heart of damage. So not going to have beams for this first room to kill that jelly, but no big deal.
Yeah, fortunately the jelly didn't give him any trouble. So Ice Palace is, I don't know, if you blink, you might just miss it. It's a pretty quick dungeon, and we skip pretty much all of it. There's a nice little bomb jump that we do coming up relatively soon that allows us to skip even having to get the big key, and allows us to just go straight to the boss. It is kind of one of the big gatekeepers of the run, because Cold Stare is a dangerous boss that can do a lot of damage. The boss himself does 4 hearts of damage. There's also some really awful little icicles that drop down that will hit you for 2 hearts. In the vanilla game, in the normal run, you get the blue mail in this dungeon, which mitigates some of that damage. But of course, our runners will not be getting that, because it is kind of a pain to get to.
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to point out, eLmaGus messed up the timing in the little bomb drop room, but did a really, really clutch job of recovering and getting a bomb on the very bottom right pixel of that wedge that didn't fall through. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, he's getting some rough RNG. The barrier's getting in the way, so he couldn't like line up without taking damage. Ooh. And Andy had also some unfortunate Zora RNG that didn't let him get into the whirlpool. Though instead of just killing the Zora, he opted to just run through him. And eLmaGus has to be super careful here. He's only got one bomb left. Ooh, nope. He's gonna have to go back into the previous room and kill some of these blueberries. Hope that they drop bombs. Oh, this is unfortunate. He might have to mirror out and go back. Oh, he's gonna take a death. But that's a lead change right there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's so quick. You know, Ice Palace is not necessarily a dungeon you're terrified of, but the penalty for a mistake in Ice Palace is pretty huge, actually. Even just entering the dungeon and being able to go back in and do stuff requires to have magic. When we get to the boss here, we're going to need to exhaust our magic bar completely to even begin the fight. So if you take a death at the boss, you actually have to leave the dungeon to go farm magic to even be able to re-enter the dungeon. So it's no joke here in Ice Palace.
Oh, and he gets it on his second try. He was a little too low on the first one. But he's got to be careful. He's going to pick up a heart here, but he's going to be down quite a bit of hearts going into this fight. Basically,
yeah, now I don't know when Andy chooses to do his little fetch quest that we're going to be coming up on here, but if he ordinarily goes and gets the ice rod after ice, we may see him actually delay that until after swamp so that he can grab a bomb in the refill room and have the resources necessary. eLmaGus going for that 4 bomb drop there from the big Stalfos, which I think is given what his health situation was and everything, definitely not a bad play to get a maximum save.
That's why I was saying earlier, you know, you can never have too many bombs. And sometimes, you know, you want to go fast, but you also have to... The time you spend making sure that you get the bomb jump or making sure that you get these things is far less than having to restart the room. And eLmaGus gets it on his... Well, I guess it would be a second try. He just kind of fell into the hole trying to line up, so he reset the room. But, alright. And he's got a pretty good lead at this point, but there's still plenty of game left for eLmaGus to make up time. And usually, you know, for a lot of runners, it's the end game where all the time save is.
Yeah, we've definitely got a few no-joke bosses coming up here, you know, where there's either there's a pretty difficult strat to pull off or something that can you know, make a pretty big difference. Certainly the Vitreous fight in Misery Mire being one where the difference between a really good fight and a really bad fight is pretty huge. If either of our runners actually know the zero cycle method for killing Argus in Swamp Palace, that can actually save more than enough to put these runners back very close, if not swap them entirely.
A nice fight from Andy. The Cold Stare kind of got away from him. You want to try and keep him up in the top right corner and just, you know, slash to your heart's content. But it's really easy. If you remain stationary for too long, you'll get one of those beautiful icicles. They'll pop down and bop you, and then all of a sudden the fight's just ridiculous. And eLmaGus has to be extremely careful here. He can't take a Cold Stare kiss. He could take another icicle to the face, but that's about it. And a death here is extremely costly. He gets the spin to kill 2 of them, and the other one goes down as well. Getting hit by another icicle after he already dies.
That was scary.
Yeah. We actually saw in a race earlier this week that one of the runners had killed Cold Stare, but an icicle had decided to finish him off before he had a chance to actually get the crystal and finish the fight. So you always got to be alert in that fight. You never know. But GG's to both runners. No deaths at Cold Stare, and Ice Palace is finally in the past, which is a good place.
Yep, so Andy going to be making his way over to the Swamp Palace. In my opinion, one of the most annoying dungeons, actually, in this run, largely because it tends to be, it's very movement heavy, but there's lots and lots of obstacles in your way, and lots of fireballs and all sorts of stuff that just love to nickel and dime you for a little bit of health here and there, and take your time.
All right, let's see what eLmaGus's route entails, if he's going to go get Ice Rider Ether, or if he's going to head straight over to Swamp. Looks like he's grabbing Ether.
This is a route that you'll see a lot of runners taking if they're concerned about having sword beams for the first, well, the second technically room in Misery Mire. The downside to doing this is that once you have the hook shot from Swamp Palace, you're actually able to do a little trick called hook climbing or sword climbing. I've heard it referred to a few different ways. On that long staircase there, which does save a little bit of time. It's not the biggest time save, but it's not insignificant either.
I still prefer the bomb climbing, the bomb stair climbing, where you set up spin speed and then you pick up a bomb, and you basically dance your way up. It's like the dancing NPCs in Secret of Mana. It's hilarious. Yeah,
I do like that one. It's not one that people use all that commonly, which I think is unfortunate, because actually it's pretty cool little trick.
Yeah, because of the difference in routing, so we're not going to really be able to tell who is currently leading. Based on how Ice Palace went, I'd still put Andy in the lead currently, but once both players meet up in Misery Mire, we'll have a better idea.
Most definitely. I mean, we can infer a little bit from how clean their swamp houses are, but barring, somebody just having a god swamp, I think we'll be looking in Mire for sure.
Yeah, the route that eLmaGus is doing right now is usually what I do. I like to grab these and then go into Swamp, just because of that whole sword beam for Mire. It makes that room pretty. It trivializes that room quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's also, just, I don't know about you, I find it really reassuring just to know that, like, okay, all my sort of errands are done at this point. It's just dungeon. I'm just plowing through. And sometimes I find that helps with my mindset to kind of keep me calm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of nice. I mean, Swamp Palace is also kind of one of those dungeons where you shouldn't, but you can kind of relax a little bit. It's a long dungeon that's a lot of back and forth, but there's no like huge tricks or anything you need to do. It's kind of one of those like calm before the storm kind of situations, I guess. If you want to look at it that way. And but yeah, for the whole like dungeon thing, you'll see a lot of players, if they're grinding out or practicing runs, a lot of them will do the Mire to Triforce run and just knock out the back half of the game, because when it's all execution at the end, I mean, I guess there's still RNG there. There's usually a lot of time saving the late half of the game. Yeah, both players now in Swamp Palace. It's been pretty straightforward. The only way you could really tell is how they're doing is based on how many hearts they've taken. But a lot of the enemies will like to just kind of get in your way, especially when you're like trying to set up a dash and they'll just poke you right at the last second.
Yep, so Andy with a 1:03:19 hookshot time. So we'll be looking to see what eLmaGus' hookshot time is, and we'll compare that to the length of the errands. Andy going for a little hookshot lineup there. Unfortunately, didn't quite get it. When you nail that lineup, you can actually just hook across that skull, lift it up, and then hook directly to the key pot in the back there, so that you can head to the back.
Oh man, these berries are giving Andy the business. He just wants to get through.
He did get the good RNG on the red jelly there. That red jelly can either be electrocuting or not, and
well,
depending on how you handle it.
He did until he dashed through it and then split it in half. And then one of the little guys hit him. And then you look over on eLmaGus' side, he's going for the hammer dash in that one room, and of course the berry gets in the way. It's a frustrating dungeon.
Yeah, I stopped going for that hammer dash for exactly that reason. There are a few hammer dashes you can do that are technically faster, but a good bit more dangerous. Yeah, I get scared.
Yeah, the thing is after this, eLmaGus will be able to just go straight over to Meyer and knock out that dungeon, and then Andy still has to go do Ether and Ice Rod Cave. Ether Tablet. So it'll be exciting to see how close these guys are. I mean, I say that, you know, Swamp Palace is pretty straightforward, easy dungeon, but there's still plenty of time loss just on movement alone. Nice second phase from Andy. The double fire rod spin. It's always really clean when you can see that, when you can get that, when you can pull that off.
Most definitely. I think see a lot of runners trying to do that in the middle of the room, which is a little bit more optimal just due to the walk time. You know, it's when you get down to it and measure these things, the quick kill on the first phase of the boss is actually a much bigger time save than that second phase quick strat is. When you consider that, you know, you are not mirroring most likely in the middle of that, or switching to mirror and those sorts of things. So it's a really interesting set of trades and balances and all that. All right, so eLmaGus also not going to get... Oh, wow. Okay. Not using the standard lineup, but still getting that hook shot to the pot with a little bit of manual nudging. That's pretty neat to see happen.
All right, let's see if Andy can get his fetch quests done, get his errands done, get his grocery shopping finished without taking any damage. The hardest part, usually, it's not so much like going to Ice Rock Cave. Yeah, the crabs can kind of get in the way, but it's mostly just like dead rocks and boulders in Death Mountain. Whew.
Yeah, dead rocks and boulders make you stop, and stopping makes you get hit by dead rocks and boulders. So it's a vicious cycle.
Excited to see eLmaGus's Argus fight coming up. I don't know if he does the quick kill or not. I know we've been talking about it, so maybe he does. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a really finicky strat, basically involving kind of an item dash while holding out the sword. It's actually pretty similar to the sword climb glitch that we were talking about earlier, but in this particular case, the timing has to be absolutely perfect in order to avoid dropping it. And once you drop it, you don't really get it back.
Yeah, they didn't go for it, but unfortunately, Argus kind of like missed a hook shot, and then of course Argus like lands on top of him, so he's got to play this a little bit safer because, you know, 2.5 hearts is not enough for this Argus fight.
Like he only landed one fire rod shot there, so just opting to go ahead and finish up with another sword spin, which I think is a smart move.
Yeah, and based on that alone, I feel like Andy's going to be retaining his lead, also having a really nice Death Mountain, not taking any damage going up here. So Andy will be the first player into Misery Mire. I guess still has to sit through this crystal cutscene mirror and then flute over.
Yeah, no, this is the longest crystal cutscene in the game. Yeah, I think Andy is probably sitting at like I don't know, maybe a minute 15 lead at this point, which is significant, but in no way a done deal. You know, it's very, very possible to lose quite a lot of time, both in Misery Mire and Turtle Rock, but especially in GT and then the Ganon fight itself.
No, Misery Mire is one of those dungeons where you have to really keep an eye on your health, because there's some required health loss in this dungeon in order to get through a couple rooms and even fight the boss. So trying to keep your health as close to max as possible is obviously preferred in general, but for this dungeon especially. And nice job from both players not dealing with Murder Dactyl at all. Sometimes they can kind of just ram their face right into you. And as we said earlier, they do a lot of damage. And you need these sword beams for the second room in Mire just to clear the Wizrobes a little bit quicker. Or a lot quicker, in fact. Oof. Those little fireball things. They always, like, they just perfectly hit you every time.
Yeah, they're pretty diabolical. You know, one of the worst things, there are lots of little fireball triggers that actually trigger on your sword swings, but I think dashes actually trigger them as well because it counts as a sword coming out, and so it can be really frustrating in a lot of rooms. So Andy got the unfortunate Fire Snake RNG where it actually goes along the top and you have to sort of walk behind it or wait. eLmaGus actually got the sort of more generous RNG where the Fire Snake was on the bottom lane. So he was able to just dash over, and that's a nice little time save when you can get it.
Yeah, you still have to... You saw him buffer a dash there, because that Medusa head, the fireball shooter, just perfectly lines up where you are, where you're going to be. It's a sharp shooter. And when you have the Fire Snake pattern that Andy had, you just walk it out and don't have to worry about that. But both players kind of getting bothered by in that bomb slug room. Also, eLmaGus missing the fire rod.
Yeah, fortunately, getting through fast enough to clutch it out. He could very easily have run out of time there and had to start over and push blocks.
Yeah, those torches stayed lit for a pretty significant amount of time because, you know, in certain game modes, you can actually get to that room with the lamp alone, without even the fire rod. You actually have enough time to push all the blocks and light all the lamps in the right amount of time. Yeah, that's one of the nifty things about blocks in this game. They're kind of wonky. You've seen some players will like despawn them by smashing the mirror button, or using the mirror whilst pushing it, or you know. You can hook shot through them while basically they just don't have a hitbox whilst they're moving.
Yeah, what's interesting is the Super Nintendo works on layers. You know, there are background layers and sprite layers and all this sort of stuff.
It's like an onion.
Sure, it's exactly like an onion. And yeah, that works great. But ultimately what happens is the background layers are kind of a little bit more static. Just in general. So when those blocks are being moved, they are actually on the sprite layer, and things on the sprite layer work a little bit differently in this game than things on the background layer. So that's why while the blocks are in motion, and only when the blocks are in motion, are you able to shoot the fire rod through them or shoot the hook shot through them, that sort of stuff.
So ideally, when you get into the Vitreous fight, you're going to be seeing these deboosts, these... walking up into this, like, the green goo does 1 heart of damage, which allows you to get iframes enough to stand within the eyeballs and get these spins off. So ideally, you want to have, what, 5 hearts, maybe 6 hearts. Optimally, only 4, I think.
Yeah, so done optimally, you'll lose 3 hearts in the fight. Done humanly, you'll probably lose another 1 or 2. Unless you're really, really, really confident and tight in your movement and everything on that fight. So I think the practice hack preset gives you 7, you know, which is generally enough to do it in a very achievable fashion. When you have powder, it's not really such a concern, but definitely when you drop powder, you're looking to make sure you come into this fight, you know, with a minimum of 6 hearts and preferably 7.
Yeah, it's another one of those fights that can easily get out of hand if you get bad eyeball RNG and one of them just decides to bop you before you even get into the sludge. And those eyeballs do a lot of damage. They do a lot. I believe 4 hearts. And it's definitely not an ideal situation. It's like bowling. You got to split the pairs.
Yeah, one of the big differentiators between a pretty darn good Vitreous fight and a really, really good Vitreous fight is actually that second phase when the big eyeball starts coming up. getting the timing of the first arrow so that you're not having to wait for another arrow to finish firing or sitting there waiting around is really, really important. The sooner you get that arrow in, the less the eye can move, the more you can stun lock it there and get a really good arrow travel distance there, so you can time your arrows and get really, really fast kill on him.
So right now, Andy has a pretty comfortable lead going into T-Rock, but T-Rock is another one of those dungeons where RNG can really kill a lot of time, or kill you. Particularly the Pokies, as they're somewhat called, or the Chomps. They do a significant amount of damage, and when you don't have safeties, 4 hearts of damage each, it kind of adds up.
Yeah, we are absolutely well into the part of the game where the game does not expect us to be here in green mail. So things are tuned to do sort of a comfortable amount of damage, but because we are in green mail, we're taking double that.
Oh, man.
So things are no joke. eLmaGus getting some very unfortunate luck with the dead rocks there.
Yeah, Andy also got some unfortunate dead rocks just trying to get into the portal. Nothing worse than getting blocked by dead rocks in a speedrun, especially in a race. But being down that many hearts for eLmaGus is not a cozy place to be, because there's really no hearts along the way. There's not many hearts along the way. I think there's only one in the room with the torches that you light. And based on what we saw earlier, the Pokey Fairy is likely not going to be happening for either player.
Yeah, there are very smartly bonking the rock to grab the fairy there. There are a few strategies in this dungeon, one of which we may see from Andy coming up real quick here, that involve intentionally taking damage again to get through obstacles faster. Some runners will mirror out here. We'll see if Andy goes for the little D-boost. He's going to go for it, or actually he's going to try and avoid it with some hook shots. Just a little bit slower, but definitely a good bit safer. What you'll see a lot of runners do there is actually on the way back down, they'll intentionally get hit by the top roller near the bottom of it so that they can dash through the bottom roller very, very quickly.
Yeah, I had actually forgotten about that fairy and the bonk rocks on Death Mountain. It's probably why it's there. It's like they figured that you would take damage along the way here.
Yeah, it's a good one to know about for sure.
Ooh. Oh no. So not only did he take damage from the chain chomps, but he ditched pushing the block a little too early and didn't push it at all. So he had to go recycle that whole room again, and down to 2 hearts. He's got to be extremely careful.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where, when you have powder, your focus is really just, I gotta make it past chomps. Once you're past chomps, you're safe. There's basically infinite anti-fairies around here that you can use to get full health very, very quickly. Without powder, getting through chomps cleanly is really, really important.
Yeah, and oh gosh, that little Pokeball is enough to kill you right there. Yeah,
Andy...
a death from Andy right now would immediately switch leads between the two players.
No question. No question at all. Especially if eLmaGus has a clean chomps here. Oh, unfortunately, got knocked back just a teensy tiny bit, preventing him from actually pushing that block, being stuck on there.
It was weird. I think he just double guessed himself or something. He was like moving towards it, and then he stopped. I don't know what that was.
Yeah, sometimes the chomp will actually knock you back a little bit, but I don't think that's what happened in this case.
Jeez,
ooh, golly.
Come on!
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, that's terrifying.
I'm not prepared for this level of anxiety.
Well, coming up, we're definitely going to be seeing some hookshot strats from him in the platform maze to get some iframes from the fire bars. But we'll likely, unless he's feeling bold, see a safety door set up in the laser bridge.
Yeah, I would be shocked if we did not see the safety door being engaged before any attempted laser shenanigans.
I mean, you lose a little bit of time, but it's a lot more. It's not as bad as, you know, starting all the way back at the beginning of the dungeon.
Yeah, I think after Chain Chomps would have been the point where I went, what's my bomb count at? Because I'm picking some up if I don't have any.
I'm surprised he didn't even go for the 2 free hearts that are sitting right up there. But, you know, if this was like a non-race situation, I could see him just going for it, you know, PB or bust. But in a race format, you know, depending on if the players are watching the stream, you know, you want to stay alive. Oh wait, he's got 2 hearts. the knockback. Also, eLmaGus having a little bit rough pokey 2 room, taking a lot of damage there, and it looks like Andy's just gonna opt to just take the death, get the health refill, and that'll be good enough. But it's gonna allow eLmaGus to catch up a tiny bit.
Getting a nice clean little laser skip though after his intentional death. So now we get to take a look at his Trinex fight and see how comfortable he is with that. I don't know about you, this is actually one of my favorite bosses in the game to fight.
Same, I really enjoy it. Especially in certain situations where you're fighting it like with hammer strats and whatnot in other game modes. It's being able to fight this boss in multiple ways is very entertaining. Yeah, I liked Andy's play of taking the death, because otherwise he would have gone into this fight with 3 hearts, and would have been more of a time loss to die here than it would have been to just take the quick death in Laser Bridge.
Most definitely. This is one of the fights in the game. There are a number of fights where sort of the more advanced strat, you know, is maybe a little bit riskier or scarier. This is the one where I actually think that the advanced strat is just safer and better. You know, once you get it once, it's kind of like riding a bike, and it allows you to control the fight a lot more effectively.
That was a very clean Trinex from Andy. Backdoor plus the double spin slash to finish off second phase. It, other than the ice head, the lineup for that cost a little bit of time. That was really good. Really good fight.
Yeah, and eLmaGus having a really good first couple phases. Missed 1 fire rod shot, but recovered very, very quickly. So pretty nice beginning. Also got the double spin and the slash. So well done. These runners are not far apart right now, at all.
Well, gosh, this is the fun thing though, is because like it's so easy just to look at 2 players and be like, all right, what's their PB? And like, oh, okay, there's a 6-minute difference between the PBs. And like, well, it's a one-sided race, but it's really not. This game is hard, especially to play it, you know, optimally and as quickly as possible, obviously. And it doesn't take much, you know, you miss 1 bomb jump and boom, there's like 3 minutes gone. So it makes for some really exciting races that could easily have a lead change. We could have a lead change at any moment in G Tower or at Agatu or Ganon.
Yeah, G Tower is definitely one of those dungeons. It's a very, very execution-heavy dungeon, and there's a fair amount of RNG in the gauntlet that requires a lot of effective reads to do really, really quickly. So there's definitely, you know, a minute plus worth of swing between a really, really good GT and not such a good GT. So literally anything could happen at this point.
Yeah, both players going into G Tower with plenty of arrows for the Ice Armos fight. Coming up halfway through where they need to do all the boss refights. We'll be fighting Armos again, Landmolus, and Moldorn, and then Aga himself. But yeah, he'll be able to skip a couple arrow. Well, I mean, there's some guaranteed arrow pots along the way. Oof. Yeah, that's a scary thing right there. You actually hit the switch as opposed to hooking the little railing or whatever, and then the spike knocks you in the hole, and boom, time loss right there.
Yeah, Andy doing a good job of getting those little blue boomerang strats there. Those are really nice. Feel really good to get done as well. I missed whether or not Andy grabbed the torch key.
He did not.
So there's a point later on where we're going to need 1 final key to get through a door to go to our Moldorm refight. We actually have 3 choices of keys to grab. That torch key is one of the slower ones, but also very, very, very safe. The other 2 options
it's
are
hard to miss that one.
Yeah, it's it's pretty difficult. The other two options are actually sort of killing these little mini helmosaurs on the way up the tower. And lastly, there's this really messy circle of blocks and crystal switches and all sorts of nonsense, and there's a key in a chest there.
Ooh, that's not good. That's a lot of hits from that anti-fairy. And, you know, you want to have as much magic going up the gauntlet as possible.
Yeah, that's one of those few situations where you're way more concerned about the magic, actually, than you are the health at that point.
Oh.
One misfire to the right, unfortunately, gonna probably be the death of that quick kill, but gets a pretty good lineup on the recovery and is able to clean it up in relatively expedient fashion.
Yeah, and he'll have to grab some more arrows right here just so he has enough for both Mimic 1 and Mimic 2. And I don't know if he's the type of player to use arrows throughout the gauntlet as well, but we'll see. Yeah,
I know that during
a little bit of... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, during PB attempts, I definitely do. During races, though, you've got to wonder, if you do take a death somewhere up there, for whatever reason, you want to make sure you don't have to go farm arrows somewhere to get back through at least that first Mimic's room, where you then have the opportunity to get some pot drops for arrows. So it's definitely a risk if you actually run through all your arrows. With 16, he should be pretty comfortable, though, having a reserve.
Yeah, but he's down to 3.5 hearts. But at the same time, Magus also did not have the cleanest of ice armos, so both players, at this point, I'm sure either player might be watching the restream, so they know whether they're ahead or behind. Turning nerves start, getting in the way. You want to get that win, because this win is kind of a huge decider in who will be staying alive in this tournament. A loss here would actually knock eLmaGus out completely, or yeah. 2 losses is pretty much over. And Andy, knowing that he's ahead, is going to take this opportunity to grab a couple fairies and magic refills, so he's going to be good to go. The only problem now is sword beams are kind of a gift and a curse. It depends on how you use them, and I am personally not a fan of them for the gauntlet, because they do kind of get in the way.
You'll see a lot of runners, actually, when they do get sword beams in some of these later situations, actually taking a single hit on purpose to get rid of them. Both of our runners doing a pretty good job of getting through the spike room, which is actually one of my favorite rooms to do in the game. There's a few different strats in there, some of which are particularly swaggy, which I enjoy doing a great deal, but both runners getting through there really, really effectively and very cleanly. Andy actually had a pretty nice gauntlet here, getting through in relatively short order and on his way to his Land Molus refight.
Yeah, it was a good call grabbing those fairies, because, of course, he played a lot more, aggressive. Took a lot of hits. Oh, that short hop. So it's going to be a 3-cycle Land Molus, too. So if eLmaGus can get a quicker fight for that, he's going to be able to save a little bit of time. Both players kind of get an unfortunate RNG for that room with the 2 red Zizaks. I think that's what they're called. Usually you can just dash through and then slash the second one, but both of them kind of went hard right. So you had to kind of wait for them to come back. Oh, man. Oh, no.
Wow.
Both players getting unfortunate Land Molus. And now eLmaGus with 0 magic, he's going to have to pick up a few extra magic pots along the way. And we'll have to resort to lamp strats in the room that Andy's going into right now. And we'll even have to pick up some extra magic in that room just in order to clear it. That is not ideal.
Yeah, he's going to have to do the slowest possible version of the strat, where you do everything with the lamp. Andy was able to do... He could have actually done a little bit more with the Fire Rod, but opted to use the lamp for the first 3, and then just have an easy-peasy Fire Rod shot for the bottom torch.
Alright, so this room that Andy's walking into now, one of the mini Helmsters is holding a small key. That's the one we were talking about earlier. He's opting to skip that one just to avoid having to deal with that. And from eLmaGus' side, you can see just how much slower this room is when you have to use only lamp, because usually, you use 3 lamp and then a Fire Rod to clear the one from the gap. It's a little bit slower. So Andy's still retaining his lead, but at the same time, Moldorn, bad Moldorn 2, bad Aga 2, or the other player having a better one of those is probably a better way to look at it.
Well, so much for that bad Moldorm 2. That was a pretty great Moldorm 2. Following up a really good job, actually, of getting through that room with the key in the chest there. It's very easy to let that room get out of hand and start having to route around slowly and be a little bit cautious. But you did a very good job of getting through there.
And he's going to be the first one into Aga 2, right around the 1:29:30 mark. So this fight can get out of hand as well. It's still 6 shots into him, and he's got 3 identical copies. And he get a 0 on the first phase, which is not ideal at all. Getting a double there, so. 0, 2, 1, so he still has to hit him 3 more times.
Yeah, and if you look at eLmaGus getting in...
Oh, jeez!
This is a 30-second race, folks, and we got a pile of RNG in between here in the end, so...
That looked like a 2 for eLmaGus there. But yeah, not a very good Aga 2 for Andy at all. I'm sure he's feeling a little frustrated from that. Let's just hope that those frustrations don't cause him to make mistakes in the Ganon fight, because at this point he does not have any room for mistakes, because eLmaGus is right on his tail. Yeah,
getting a very nice Aga 2, so this is really, really close. This may be down to like a 15, 20-second tops race at this point.
So it's going to come down to, the 1-and-1. Players are trying to not have to do multiple cycles for each phase. There are 4 phases of this fight. It could come down to, phase 2 spawn. It could come down to warps. Andy's going to be going for some risky dash strats. He is 1 Ganon hug away from death, so he's got to be extremely careful here.
Yeah, getting the 1 cycle on the mama.
Okay, we're good. Jeez.
All right, so Andy with the really, really nice and very, very clutch 1-and-1. So he's in good shape right now.
Oh man, and eLmaGus not getting a very favorable phase 2 spawn, just because you can't really work with that too much. So he's going to be a phase behind, but Andy's lead is suddenly building. eLmaGus sitting at 1.5 and he takes it down.
Oh no, eLmaGus.
Oh, that's
not what you want to see.
Andy does get the torch glitch, so now it's just a dozen or so spins away, and this race will be in the bag for him. Based on his speedrun.com PB, this is it's a massive PB for him. He might have PBs in the works and just hasn't uploaded them, but this is looking really crisp. Oh man, but that's so unfortunate to be that close. And then, it's one of those. It's just Ganon fights, man. Sometimes you don't get a favorable RNG or favorable spawn. You gotta be able to work with the different RNGs, the different setups. But there it is.
Wow, very, very nicely done. Getting that. This is gonna be a 132. Very, very nice run.
What an incredible finish, Andy. Taking the win, finishing with a SR.TV time of 1:32:52. And his comment is, "If I lost because I jumped off Desert Ledge, I would have been for real, man."
I would have too.
So GG's to him, getting a massive. That Desert Palace split is going to be an easy gold, or at least an easy time save in the future. But what an incredible race for them. eLmaGus in the last phase. He'll be finishing up this fight pretty soon as well. Oh, man.
Yeah, based on his timer, that's a 2.5-minute PB. So that's pretty huge. G frickin' G.
Yeah, what an insane race. We'll see if they'd like to come in and chit-chat with us. But yeah, Andy took the lead at Ice Palace when eLmaGus failed the bomb jump twice and ran out of bombs and had to mirror out, and was able to just retain that lead the entire time, keeping it really, really close there at the end. How many seconds different was it going into Ganon?
Like 14.
Jeez. What a great race. That was a lot of fun to commentate and watch.
Yeah, it was really, really, really great. Super tight, pretty much the whole way through, honestly. Yeah, certainly after Ice Palace, where eLmaGus unfortunately had a little trouble.
And we do have Andy in here. GG on the race, man. That was incredible.
I am so happy that I finally PB'd after 2 years. So, the story behind that PB that I have is I learned the game strictly to do randomizers, and I never improved it. So, like, I definitely knew I had better mechanical skills, but I really, you know, never put it to an actual run.
Fair enough.
I'm really lucky that things went the way I did, especially after I accidentally jumped off Desert Ledge.
It was unfortunate, but not the worst time loss ever. It's just going to be an easy time save in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, my Light World was not very. My Light World was just never good. I've never been good at Light World. But I kind of got lucky. Only 2 blue balls. I almost beefed it in Chomp Room. That was scary. Jesus.
Yeah, 2 hearts through a good chunk of T-Rock is not a favorable situation to be in. And even taking the intentional death warp or death at a laser bridge just to have more hearts going into Trinex was a very smart on-the-spot decision, because it'd be better to just go ahead and die there and restart right there than to die at Trinex and have to
definitely
run all the way through that again.
It also
only had 3 hearts going into Trinex at max.
Also, my memory of the route in terms of how many bombs and arrows I should have at any given time, completely gone. I was completely winging it. Like, well, I think I need bombs here, so I think I'll grab these extra ones, maybe just in case.
When's the last time you did an NMG run? That's the real question.
Like 2 months ago. Like, I tried to do a sloppy run just to make sure I could, you know, hold up still, and I almost PB'd that run, so, I mean, it's only, you know, a matter of time before I PB this run.
I mean, that's the thing, is like whether you're playing just straight NMG or whatnot, as long as you're just playing Link to the Past, you're gonna improve, like just in general.
And like I said, I may have gotten this PB 2 years ago, but the muscle memory for randomizer still exists. So, like, even if I don't play for a while, a lot of it still kind of feels familiar, if that makes sense.
No, I'm in the exact same boat, because like I loved watching NMG, was aware of it, you know, learned the run, but never ran it. But then played randomizer for a year, and then was like, hey, let's do NMG. And, you know, you can kind of surprise yourself with your ability to memorize a specific route, a specific run. And yeah, I think there's perks to just playing the game in general. It helps in any sort of situation, so.
Yeah, so with that, we do actually have eLmaGus in voice with us as well. I think he might be muted right now, but hopefully we can get his thoughts on how things went as well.
Yo, GG dude.
GG Magus.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, my run actually was really good, honestly. Like, most of it was really nice. Dead rocks were really bad before TR. Like, I lost like 30 seconds to those. Bad GT, to be honest. But of course, the thing that killed me was that my start button didn't work for buffers and Ice Palace. That lost me literally 3 minutes.
Ugh.
So
Ran out of bombs, I guess.
I had to go back to the start and do it again. Like, when I tried to adjust for the bomb jump, like, I couldn't like move into place, and then I meshed start and nothing happened. So like, I literally lost 2 bombs that way. And yeah, from there I had to go back to the start and then go back in, you know.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Very unfortunate.
Yeah, it was. eLmaGus was in the lead right up until the Ice Palace thing, and then Andy took over and just.
I don't doubt that for a second.
Retained it.
Better than me. I'm not gonna even deny that. I got lucky.
Yeah.
I jumped off Desert Ledge. Floppy.
Yeah, we couldn't really tell who was leading until you guys met up in Mire, just because you guys did different ice rod ether routes, like timing wise. And then it was like, I think like 15 seconds, 20-second difference between entering Ganon for each of you. Which And then, you know, Ganon, that fight can go any which way, just depending on what kind of pattern you get from him.
Yeah, because I had full ice armors, I had different fire bats, which actually messed me up quite a bit, and then I also took a death there. And then the second fight was, of course, perfect, because, like, you know, why not? But,
yeah, it's usually how it goes. Both you guys had a little sloppy ice armos.
Nice.
And actually, both you guys had bad armos. Both armos fights were bad.
Oh, good. I thought I was alone.
So, but I mean, missing the quick kill in the first armos fight's not as bad. But leaving Eastern Palace with 0 arrows is kind of frustrating.
Yeah. Definitely embarrassing to mess up the quick kill in Eastern.
Well, it depends how you mess it up.
I fired one too many arrows.
Oh, that's a good way to do it. I just literally faced left and then shot an arrow left for no reason.
Oh, great.
That was pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
overall,
it's
it
so
was
easy
oh, good.
No, I was gonna say those little D-pad misfires are so easy to have happen to you when you least expect it, and it's good job to both you guys for recovering from every time it happened pretty nicely.
Yay.
Yes, yeah, that might come through at some point. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Bad.
We all know you're having a good time at GSH.
Yeah.
Yeah, GG's to both runners. That was a fun watch. Great one to commentate. I know everyone watching in Twitch chat enjoyed that as well. So GG's to both you guys. Andy, that was your first race in the tournament. So
that is
you're
correct.
sitting at 1-0. You still have to face off against Keong and Shayrilla. So good luck to you in your next upcoming matches. Maybe you'll see another PB.
Yeah. I finally cut the patty after several years.
There you go.
That was the first milestone I was looking at.
I thought cutting the fruit bats was like the key milestone.
Probably is, but I just haven't really. I don't know what fruit bats time is. I just cared about not being behind patty.
Fair enough. Cutting the patty's easy. Everyone can
It
do
is, but I was behind by 20 seconds for 2 years because I never bothered to improve.
Well,
Patty.
poor Patty. Hope he's having fun at PAX East. But yeah, unfortunately, with the 2 losses, though, that will be the N4 eLmaGus moving on in the tournament. He does still have 1 more race left to race in the tournament, but I hope for him that he had a good time.
Not a good time to lose against Andy, honestly, but yeah.
Rip.
I guess.
I'm saying, yeah, in general.
Yeah, sure. Always fun to come back to this game.
You're still my favorite German. Forever and ever.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for us for this race. We do have another race coming up in 45 minutes on this channel. I believe it will be a quad race. Felix _TC versus Greenland and Shirt, and Scrivo versus Philion. So look forward to watching that one. Want to give a huge shout outs to y'all for watching, of course to Speedman for putting on this tournament. GG's to both of our runners for putting on a great show, and of course to my co-commentator for joining me on this fun adventure at the last minute.
Thank you too, and yeah, and GL to my homie Nathan Fillion coming up in that race in a little while.
Should be fun. Alrighty, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was fun. Adios.
Bye.